Hello and welcome to today's Grain Market Blast with myself, Ryan Paisley, and the goddess of grain, Angie Setzler, where Angie will be providing us with a rapid roundup of the latest pricing flows and market moving news in agricultural markets. But before she does, I will get the boring legals out of the way. Nothing discussed on this podcast is trading investment advice or infers any kind of endorsement by PIQ, myself, Ryan, or indeed Angie. As usual, do your own due diligence. As usual as well, for anyone not listening to this live, this is obviously recorded live. There's no editing. We do occasionally swear. We do occasionally go off on a weird tangents, but that's why you love us. Hopefully put a smile on your face, is adding a bit of value. But before I start waffling on even more, Angie, how are you, my love?
Me swear or go on tangents?
No.
No. Any one of my customers, I don't know if I've ever said this here before, but generally when I'm speaking to a new customer or like meeting someone new or whatever, I'm like, okay, first things first, like you don't pay by the word. I don't charge by the word. So you're lucky because there will be a lot of them that I will use. So yeah, happy Tuesday.
So just quickly, this reminds. So I actually got invited to do a podcast for a broker this week, and
Really?
don't sound surprised,
Surprise.
but literally my first point was, by the way, and it was gonna go out as a live seminar. My first point was, by the way, in case you don't already know, but I swear a lot, and they were like, oh,
I get
what? And they were like,
that.
what do you class as a swear word? And I rattled off about 20 of them. They were like, oh, okay.
And like I could put them all together in a chain if you would like me to. I can use them in a sentence, just purely them in the sentence. So yeah, same thing. I am my father's prettiest son. So what are you gonna do about that? But yeah, happy Tuesday. Here we are. It is another day in the hostage situation, I guess you can say, or whatever. Like everyone's just
Fun
being here so they don't get fined ahead of Thanksgiving, in the US. Like we're definitely, like you can basically see it. Everyone is mentally just spinning in their chair. But there's a lot of things that are happening that we have to pay attention to still. Like we have a lot of developments going on, most specifically, I would say, between Russia and Ukraine. And just kind of, although it does feel like deja vu all over again for me, like I'm like, okay, yeah, we've seen this one before. Like they're not even trying to rewrite the next season. Like they're just basically just using the same plot from the last season, it seems, which I'm not downplaying this. This is important, but it does feel like it's repetitive. But maybe this time, we're getting somewhere. We did see overnight, and Trump did say that yesterday too, like just be ready, something good's happening. But it sounds like the 28-point plan has become, and we kind of talked about this a little bit yesterday, but it seems to have been, kind of agreed to, or at least right now, Ukraine seems to have come to a conclusion with the US on what points will fly. And so the 28-point plan has turned into a 19-point plan, and the other points that we have are left to be discussed later,
Yeah.
basically. And so maybe this works. I'm not going to sit here. I don't want to downplay it. Like I said, I don't want to act like it. But, we kind of have heard this before, basically, where Russia presents.
And this is it, right? It's trying to find that balance because, no one wants to just completely ignore and say this is never going to work.
Yes.
That's not the attitude we want. And that's definitely,
we want this to be done. Yeah.
Exactly. But we have to be pragmatic and say we have heard very similar things in just different kind of different accents, basically. And written with in different handwriting. But hopefully this time is different. But we do have to be mindful that there's every chance it won't be.
Yes, realistically speaking, it is not going to be, because unless Ukraine, and this is purely my opinion, and I am not an expert by any means. I've just been kind of, I've been an onlooker. I have been someone who I've tried to really kind of stay on top of the developments as they've come out and some of these other things, because it does have a massive influence on grain movement and the grain market in general. But, we've seen the same points requested by Russia. And the biggest thing to me is what kind of precedent would it set if we allowed one sovereign nation to invade another sovereign nation, and then basically after 2 or 3 years, when it looks like it's not great for the invaded sovereign nation, we say, okay, well, you just go ahead and split off some of this territory that they didn't even capture to begin with,
Yeah.
too. That would be
Right.
fine. And not only that, like, we're going to split off this territory that they didn't get, that, but it's theirs. They deserve it. It's like buy one, get one, get a hectare, buy one free or whatever. Like, and again, not downplaying it, but that's basically what we're doing here.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely.
And and that's what is that set? Especially when the invaded nation is then required to give up their military or cut their military in half and is no longer allowed to determine what alliances they have. Like, it's just a really slippery slope.
Yes.
And we can talk about Russia putting this whole we won't invade Europe or Ukraine ever again into their constitution or whatever, but I think they weren't supposed to do this
Yeah, well,
constitution.
this is like, well, you saying that it was in there beforehand.
Yes, like, I mean, and so right now we're on that roller coaster. And again, I'll reiterate, like, everyone acts like, oh, okay, well, this is so bearish. Like, I read someone say this today. The resolution to the war would be bearish grains because that would mean that we would see, just sort of this return to production levels as seen, prior to the situation or whatever. Look at the export state. Look at Russia. Look at Russia pre-invasion. Look at Russia now. Like, there hasn't been a change.
Yeah.
Okay. Like, Ukraine, yes, you've seen a downturn from the year prior to the invasion, but average ahead of the invasion really isn't that far off from where they are now. Now, Ukraine obviously has taken the biggest hit. For one. For two, they've lost Crimea, which is really a fertile place. Like, and then we have all of the confusion that comes with how the USDA is counting production because they don't count Crimea. And this, that, and the other thing. So we'll just be paying attention. Russia, has already kind of hinted that they'll reject any sort of major changes to their agreement as it is, kind of like, hey, this was the plan. If this was the U.S. plan. If you don't
Yeah.
stick with it, we're not gonna follow. But we'll see. Like I said, Zelensky, I said this to a group earlier today I was talking to. Zelensky might surprise me and concede, or maybe the conversation is we're just further ahead to do this because of
Right.
what's going on with the energy grid and all of these other things. The guarantees are better, yada, yada, yada. Like, maybe there is progress on the Zelensky side. I doubt Russia is going to concede anything
No,
at
I
this point.
agree with you.
So we'll see. We'll see how it all plays out and see what the 19-point plan, which points made it past the sniff test or whatever, and we'll go from there. On the other side, we've got China. There's talk that we have 4 meetings next year between Trump and Xi. We're seeing the administration do their, sort of media blitz, talking about what is happening with China and the U.S. So you saw Besant and Rollins both say that all is well. We're on schedule. They will be making their purchases. Yada, yada, yada. Now, a lot of people are still holding on to the end of the year thing, which we have heard from the administration. Like, we'd heard from the administration initially, it would all be done by the end of the year. But I feel like Besant said within the last 2 weeks that by next spring is kind of their deadline. Like, I think he kind of opened it up to where, okay, we're not going to force this year end thing. But we'll see. China is making purchases. There have been rumors that there are being or potentially washing out of purchases that they have with Argentina and possibly repurchasing or reowning out of the U.S. One of the things that we have is you've got Kofco, who is reportedly purchasing for the state crushers, who have poorer margins, and that's where your Argentina stuff would come into play and things like that. And then there's talk that Sino would buy for reserves and things, and that they're going to be buying more last half or maybe after the first of the year or whatever. Like, they're going to take delivery spread out throughout next year for their reserves. And so we'll see how that all comes together. What has my attention more than anything, and a friend of mine said yesterday, put it very well, that Milo sorghum could be the canary in the coal mine
Got you.
or has been. And so that's what we're seeing is China has come in. Now, we're like 30-year low on Milo basis. Like, it's hot garbage down there. They don't have a place to put. It's super cheap and it's a great alternative for feed. And so there is talk that they are making purchases of sorghum, and that generally will lead to purchases, or has led in the past to purchases of corn. We are watching China's corn prices continue to rally. They have these problems that I've talked about, quality, logistics and things. Demand is really solid for cornstarch and all of these other factors at play. And so you are seeing corn prices rally much earlier than normal. Typically, you wouldn't
Right.
see cash corn rally in China until April or May, per some of the sources that I read and things, people who are smarter than me that I trust. They're kind of like, whoa, pay attention to this. Typically you don't start, you don't see a rally start in China corn on the 15th of October. The other years that we've seen that happen this early was 2018, which was the first year I thought we would see them import corn. They didn't really end up importing corn at all that year. You just saw the cash prices stay elevated. But then 2020, again, we heard about that. And in 2020, of course, they ended up importing almost 30 million metric tons of corn that year because they'd had production issues, cash prices had firmed, this, that, and the other thing. And so that's the biggest thing I'm going to be watching, because the market is not pricing that in right now. Like, the market is trying to say that demand is overstated, and pointing towards export demand even being potentially overstated. And if China steps in and buys even an extra 3 or 4 million metric ton that we really don't have factored into the balance sheet right now, that's a lot of corn, a lot more corn to be shipped. We're basically maxed out, logistically speaking, through the end of January as it stands into the PNW. Like, we've got
Right.
solid demand for a while. And so, yeah, things are spicy on the cash side, and we'll see how China wants to tackle this. China could really compound everything by just being like, yeah, they told us they wanted us to buy.
Take our money.
It's like, we're going to buy all of it, ladies. And so and we'll just watch. Otherwise, yesterday's export sales report basically, or we got an export sales report this morning, and yesterday we had export inspections. The export inspections numbers are more important to me because they're the ones that are up to date, and so export inspections for last week kind of showed a continuation of strong wheat shipments and, decent corn shipments. Corn shipments were down week over week, but we also shipped a behemoth, a massive, absolutely astounding amount of corn a week ago. So to see them down week over week isn't too surprising. Corn shipments as a whole this year are ahead of last year's pace by 71%.
Wow, I'm no expert, even though that's a bigger number than I was expecting.
It's freaking nuts, right? And so you've got that. And then soybean shipments, everyone wants to talk about. They're 45%, about half of where we were a year ago. But, if we maintain this sort of pace, 29 to 33, million metric tons, million bushels a week, which is, right around just under a million metric ton of beans a week, which is historically low. But that's all we need to get to meet the USDA numbers.
Right.
So, I say this and I will say it again and again. Everyone wants to talk about what has happened in the past. Oh, China this, China that. Last year, the 5-year average, 10-year average, whatever. That doesn't matter. It's a futures market. All that matters is if they're meeting the pace that's needed to meet to get to what the USDA says they should be getting this year or not.
Right.
And so right now, beans are meeting the pace that they need to get to be in line with the USDA numbers. Crush is running a little ahead of where we would need to, though it's super early. Like, I can't, whatever. But I think it'll continue to run relatively decently. And so there's a lot of things that we're watching there that we'll continue to watch. This morning's export sales were from like October 9th. Corn number backed off from a week ago, but was still really strong. Wheat number was stronger than expected or at the higher end of expectations. And beans still didn't show China, but that was not a surprise. China did not show up and start buying soybeans until after the first part of November. And so these export sales reports that we're getting this week, we'll get one Friday for the week of the 19th or something like that, the 16th, I think, October 16th. And so, yeah, we'll just kind of continue to watch what happens in demand. Cash is calm because it's the holiday, and here we are. Everyone's in holiday mode.
Well, this is it. Right? Everyone I'm speaking to on your side of the pond has already signed off. The amount of meetings I keep trying to schedule for a Thursday, and everyone's like, "No, we're off."
Mentally, I am on the other side of it. I can tell you what, I'm already thinking about the turkey and the nap after turkey more than anything. Like, while the Lions play, it's just a thing that we do here. So yeah. So we'll see. We'll kind of watch the developments between Russia and Ukraine. What the U.S. does, like how U.S. reacts this time. Do they just reject? Do we? I don't know. We'll see. Like I said, if Zelensky this time may bend quite a bit more if needed, just simply because of what's going on with their electrical grid and their infrastructure and some of these other things. But at the same time, I don't think his citizens want to. I think that it would be come all this way just to turn around and go home, like to a certain extent. Like, yes, they want the war to be over, but not if it feels like forced capitulation, I
Yeah.
don't think. And so we'll see. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But yeah, happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday to you as well. Well, Angie, thank you so much as always. Really do appreciate you getting on the call with me and to extol all your knowledge about grain markets. Listeners, thank you so much as always. Me and Angie really do appreciate you. And whatever you're doing today, keep it tight, stay safe. Start looking forward to your turkey, and we'll see you all tomorrow. Much love.
Have a